Welcome back to another episode of State of the Stallions. This is actually our 20th episode. Believe it or not, this is the 20th one of these that we've put out there since I started doing this a handful of months ago. And this is actually going to be an episode of first because for the first time since the UFL and the merger of the XFL and USFL, the Stallions have actually lost a game. And for the first time since I started this podcast, it's the first loss that they've had that I've had to discuss and talk about. So we're going to talk through the game, try to look at what went wrong, diagnose a little bit of the problems and the issues, and really kind of look ahead and think about what do the Stallions need to fix to get back on track as they enter to a critical stretch of the season. So this is State of the Stallions. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoy the show.
Here we go. Let's go. Hey, giddy up on three. 1, 2, 3. Giddy up.
You can feel the buzz when you're around this city. People have fallen in love with the Birmingham Stallions. Here we go. We're getting a little juice going.
Birmingham is going to win the USFL championship.
So first of all, let me say, missing my flag for this episode because I actually made the trip down to San Antonio, took the flag with me, forgot to get it out of the car and put it back up before I started recording this, and then it was too late. Here we are. So, but all that to say, I actually was at this game and got to sort of see it firsthand live. Had a good experience in San Antonio, met some really nice fans there. They're very hospitable. Shout out to the Horns Forward podcast for feeding us before the game and giving us a San Antonio branded beer, which is really cool to see. Hopefully back 40 next year, with all these watch parties they're doing. Hopefully we can get a Stallions lager or something like that. I think that would be huge for the city. So shout out to the people of San Antonio. Overall, had a great experience down there, except for the fact that it was blazing hot. And, for whatever reason, there was this one rather nasty, rude fan behind us. But, I guess there's always a bad apple somewhere. So other than that, it was a great time. And other than the fact that we, again, ended up losing the game, which was unfortunate. But I was glad I was at least able to see there and kind of be near the field and kind of get the pulse of what was going on. And so what I want to do is I'm not going to kind of give my sort of 3 typical takeaways like I do this time. Instead, what I want to do is actually kind of just run through a little bit of what happened in the game in order to point out some of the mistakes and some of the things that went wrong and some things that I think need to be addressed moving forward. And, I know nobody really wants to relive it. I didn't really want to relive it either, but I went back and watched the film and just kind of made note of all the things that need to be talked about. And obviously the team will do the same thing. But after I do that, I'll kind of maybe, make some more general observations and, give out some star players of the show before wrapping up here. But it might end up being a little bit longer than usual because of that. But, to start the game, San Antonio got the ball first. And one of the first things that you saw that was going to be a problem and became a theme for the day was the inability to tackle Anthony McFarland and therefore stop the run. I think DeMarcus Gates had 2 or 3 missed tackles, if I remember correctly, on the first series on McFarland. And, really all game, we struggled to stop the run. I mean, occasionally here and there, we would have a good play, but I mean, they were picking up, 10, 12, 8 yards on the ground with McFarland, who everybody knew what he could do coming into this game because he just tore it up the week before against Arlington. And yet it just didn't feel like we had really planned for that. And, most of the game, I felt like they spread us out. AJ Smith, air raid offense. They are a pass first offense and they like to sort of spread people out. But we kept just kind of having 5 guys in the box and sort of daring them to run on us. And they kept doing it. And so I know, when you plan for an air raid offense, you're probably expecting a lot more passing than maybe the San Antonio did. And I know Corey Chamberlain, who was calling our defense, we'll talk more about that in a little bit, is a secondaries coach and is probably, maybe planning for the pass game a little bit more than our typical defensive coordinator, John Chavis, who is a linebackers coach, maybe makes it more of a priority to stop the run. But it felt like we were just letting them run all over us. And that was true on the first drive. Now, we got bailed out because Gates forced a fumble, which was huge. But, again, it was a sort of a sign of things to come. And then on the opposite side, it was sort of the first drive was also very telling for the offense. We got the ball. We had 2 drops by Amari Rogers on that drive alone. despite that fact, we were still able to move the ball okay down the field, and we got down into their territory. But we got to I think it was like a 3rd and 8 or something like that, and completed a pass. It wouldn't have been enough for a first down, but it kind of put us maybe in field goal range, or potentially the opportunity to go for it on 4th and relatively short. But instead of kicking a 55-yard field goal or going for it, we ended up having to punt because we got a penalty for taunting because D. Gray flat-backed a guy and then I guess made his fingers in the sign of a gun or something like that. And at least that's what they said on the broadcast. It wasn't something I saw at the game on the field, but apparently they flagged him for taunting or whatever the call was on sportsmanlike conduct, and that backed us up 15 yards and forced us to punt, and again kept us from kicking a long field goal or going for it on 4th down. And again, you could kind of debate, the penalty. I felt like it was a little ticky tacky for a guy to sort of celebrate, a big play and be penalized like that for it in this professional football league. Now, granted, I didn't see it. I don't know exactly, what he did. So maybe it was flagrant enough or bad enough that he deserved it. I think there's an argument to be made that just don't do that kind of stuff and you avoid having to even worry about the situation. But honestly, if you're going to flag somebody every time in these professional leagues that they taunt a little bit or celebrate a little bit, I feel like there'd be a lot more flags thrown. But I don't know. Again, I didn't fully see it, so I don't know. We shouldn't have put ourselves in that situation. We ended up shooting ourselves in the foot, taking us out of a possible 3 points, or again, a chance to maybe go for it on 4th down. And again, that's sort of very telling in a lot of ways of the rest of the game and the offensive struggles are sort of 1 step forward, 2 step back. The next time we were on defense, we had a 15-yard personal foul by Kenny Robinson, and I watched it on film. I don't think it was intentional. It looked to me like he led more with his shoulder than his helmet, but he did hit the guy in the head. Whether it was intentional or not, that's going to get flagged in this game, and that set up a trick play touchdown from them. And in hindsight, yeah, should we have been prepared for that? Should we have been, known that maybe that would come? I mean, yeah, they've done that before. It's not the first time Jonche Kirkland has thrown a touchdown on a double pass like that. So, AJ Smith has those kind of tricks up his sleeve. But at the same time, they ran a trick play, and trick plays, it's usually, I mean, a lot of times it's usually either a disaster or a touchdown. There's usually not a lot of in between. And in this case, it was a touchdown and a great call by AJ Smith. So, we could have been more prepared for that one, but I'm willing to cut the defense some slack on that. It was good execution by San Antonio. Got the ball back on offense, started driving a little bit, got into a 3rd and 1 situation, 3rd and 2, got in the tee, and maybe for the first time this year, couldn't convert on the tee. And again, that was also sort of telling of the day of we just, one of my keys to this game going into it was we've got to dominate the line of scrimmage. They've got a great defensive line, good offensive line. So do we. We need to win that battle, and we just didn't. We just got bullied. I mean, I hate to say it, but we did. And Ricky tried to bounce it on the tee because of the pressure that was coming off the edge, and he couldn't get the first down, and so we had to punt the ball away. And then, they didn't get much going on their drive, so we got the ball back on our 3rd offensive possession. Again, we had a drop pass. CJ Marable was sort of on a wheel route down the sideline. It would have been a really difficult catch. It's hard to blame him too much for that, but I mean, it did hit him in the hands. I think it was potentially catchable. Adrian maybe could have put it on him a little bit better, but that was a big missed opportunity because that would have been a minimum 30-yard gain. We still were able to drive down the field and get pretty close to the red zone, and then Jordan Thomas slips coming out of his route. He otherwise probably would have caught the pass, got the first down. We could have potentially scored a touchdown. So we got a field goal out of that, but again, that was potentially another 3 to 6 points off the board that we didn't get. And I don't know. I meant to look this up before I recorded this, but I don't know how old the turf is in the Alamo Dome, but one of the things I noticed was that guys were slipping a lot, and the turf aesthetically did not look very good. So my assumption, I could be wrong about this, but my assumption is that turf is relatively old, and guys just couldn't seem to get their footing quite like they normally can in some of these other newer, nicer fields, and that was just one situation where that came back to bite us. And again, that affects both teams and all that sort of thing, but that's just an unfortunate mistake that killed a drive and again kept us from maybe potentially scoring a touchdown there. And then we get the ball back on defense. They throw a 5-yard slant. Jonche Kirkland doesn't get tackled, even though the guy has him wrapped up. He breaks loose, takes a 5-yard gain or 6-yard gain into a 35-yard gain and gets them down and deep into our territory, and that eventually turns into a touchdown. So again, just missed tackles, it's really inexcusable. We get the ball back. Again, we get a 3rd and 5 scenario, can't convert. I think at halftime, I know our 3rd down conversions were 1 of 5. So again, we struggled with that all first half and into the second half. They get the ball back. We punt it. We pin them deep. They get the ball back with a little over 2 minutes to go inside their own 5. Perfect situation for us to get a stop, get the ball back with great field position with the 2-minute drill where we are usually at our best offensively. But, they get a 3rd and 6, they convert. They get a 3rd and 5, they convert. And, that was the thing. We were 1 and 5 on 3rd down conversions at the end of the first half. They were 5 of 7. So we couldn't keep drives alive, and we couldn't get them off the field. And that's usually a recipe for disaster. And, so they didn't end up scoring there, but it kept us from getting the ball back and potentially scoring ourselves before half. We opened the second half with a great drive. Jay Sternberger really put the team on his back, got us down into the field, got us into the end zone, which was great and got us a little bit of momentum. And you could tell that was a good kind of jolt to the guys in their system. But, again, it ended up not being enough. They got the ball back. We got a good defensive stop. But again, we got the ball, drove down, had a 3rd and 4 at their 44-yard line. Needed to get 4 yards to get a first down, and we couldn't. So again, we had to punt it away on a 3rd and relatively short, and we were at their 44. So it ended up being a touchback. So it was really only a 24-yard punt, which is just again a frustrating missed opportunity. Again, defense continued to play well in the second half, got a stop on their next possession, but then we turned around and had a 3 and out. One which we were sacked on 2nd down. So, Adrian, I felt like wasn't entirely under duress the whole game, but San Antonio, to their credit, got a lot of pressure on him. And I think there was a couple times where, we were missing our right tackle, Alex Taylor. We were rotating some guys on the offensive line. That's something we've always done, so that's not new. But there was a couple guys that don't usually play as much that I felt like played more, and I did feel like they were sort of a liability at times and led to us being put in some precarious positions when we were on offense. So had to punt the ball away. They get the ball. McFarland runs all over us. They get down the field. They did have that play where it looked like there was a fumble that was returned for a touchdown by Burns, but, it was negated by a penalty. I think even if it hadn't been negated by the penalty, it still would have been incomplete. So, I mean, excuse me, I think that didn't matter too much in the grand scheme of things. But again, it's just sort of, that's kind of how our defense has played at times this year is, we'll give up yards, but then we kind of are very opportunistic and make plays in the red zone and force turnovers. And you had an opportunity to do that on that play, and it didn't happen. And then it turns around and they ended up scoring because even though after that happened, we got them backed up into a 3rd and 26 after an offensive pass interference. And, Kenny Robinson elbows a guy while he's down on the ground after the play, and they end up scoring. And I know, some Stallions fans didn't like that call. Again, you could debate, kind of like the call against D. Gray, like, was it a little ticky-tacky? If they're going to call every sort of little shove after the play or something like that, should there have been more called than there was? We can debate that. I think the point is, though, either way, like, don't even put yourself in that position, right? Like, don't put yourself in a position where you're having to debate, oh, should they have called this penalty on us because I kind of threw an elbow after the play and gave them the opportunity to throw the flag. It's just completely unnecessary. I know there's a lot of frustration in this game, a lot of frustration with how it was going, with how the team was playing, and I think Kenny Robinson is a very passionate player, and I think it just got the best of him in that moment. And it was just kind of the worst time for that to happen because, again, it gave them an automatic first down, set them up to then turn around and score 2 plays later. And, now we're in trouble because, we're down by 9 with not much time left. And we get the ball, again, get another sack. We get into a 3rd and 4, and Adrian throws a go route to Dion down the sideline. I don't know whose idea that was. I'm going to guess it wasn't Skip's. I'm going to guess it was Adrian's. I'm guessing Adrian saw something that he liked. Hindsight's 2020. If they complete that pass, we'd all be thinking, wow, that was amazing. That was a great play. But, they didn't. I don't love the call or the decision by Martinez. I think, If it's earlier in the game, if it's maybe a second and short or something like that, then yeah, take a shot. But when it's 3rd and 4 with, roughly 5, 6, 7 minutes left to go in the game and you're down 9 and we have to get a first down to keep this drive alive, it doesn't seem like the time to take a shot to me. So had to punt the ball away after that. Fortunately, the defense was able to get a stop after they gave up a pass interference, which gave them a first down and let them keep the ball a little bit longer, but they were able to get a stop after that. And then, Brad Wing punts the ball like a bajillion yards, and we don't field it. So, we miss out on 10 or 20 yards there by probably not by Amari Rogers not fielding that punt. And so then we get the ball back for one final possession, down 9 with 2 minutes to go. And again, just strange things like Kevin Austin, they run a double move with Kevin Austin. He's wide open. Adrian throws him the ball, and he's like turned around looking the wrong direction, just like what in the world? Like, it's like a week 1 kind of, quarterback receiver out of sync kind of stuff. So again, what's going on there? I don't know. It was very strange, but huge missed opportunity to get probably 30 or 40 yards. But fortunately, again, Adrian was able to drive us down the field and kind of get us into a spot where it looked like we might have a chance to score and potentially tie it up before the end of the game and go to overtime. But Adrian just makes a mistake in the heat of the moment, trying to be the hero, and chucks the ball across his body, across the middle of the field, under pressure, 30, 40 yards in towards the end zone, and it gets picked off, and that's the game. So I think all that to say, you can just tell by me rehashing that in terms of the penalties, the inability to stop the run, the inability to get them off the field on third downs, the inability to convert third downs ourselves, the miscommunication between the receivers and the quarterback, the inability for us to run the ball. I mean, Skip went away from the run, and he admitted that after the game. He probably shouldn't have done that. But we had, I think CJ and Ricky combined only had like maybe 9 carries. And there was a few times where we tried to run the ball where we totally got stuffed, but we also had a few very good runs. I mean, CJ, I think on his 2 carries averaged like almost 10 yards per carry. So there was some challenges running the ball, but there was also some glimmers of hope. And I think we maybe went away from that too fast, tried to force things in the pass game. Again, mental mistakes, unnecessary, again, bad decisions that led to penalties or keeping drives alive, all those kinds of things. And that's not how champions play, and that's not how champions win, and that's not historically how the Stallions have played. It was very uncharacteristic, I felt like, for them. Now, all that to say, I think San Antonio does deserve a lot of credit. I don't want to say that the Stallions just lost this game and San Antonio didn't win it, because to San Antonio's, in San Antonio's defense, I felt like they came out and they wanted this game more. Yes, you could maybe make the argument that they had a little bit more at stake because there's the potential that if St. Louis had won against Arlington, then they really needed to win this game to keep their playoff home game hopes alive. So they maybe had a little bit more motivation going into it. Obviously, they probably wanted to end our win streak. The Stallions didn't maybe have quite that same sort of, pressure or hype leading into the game. But, again, the Stallions have always preached this, and I really believe it. I really think the players buy into it, of this sort of 1-0 mentality, and that they're only focused on the game that's at hand. And so, we played our starters for the most part. We rested a few guys that were a little banged up, but for the most part, we played our starters. We played the game to win, and we didn't. And so I think San Antonio, again, deserves a lot of credit. I felt like they bullied us. I felt like they won the battle in the trenches. They kind of exerted their will on us in the run game. I felt like Garbers played very well. And obviously, San Antonio is kind of peaking and getting healthy at the right time. So they are a scary team, and they won this game. And again, they deserve a lot of credit for that. But I will say, with the Stallions, having watched them very closely for 3 years now, and having been to, the majority of their games in person, there was just something about this game that just didn't seem quite right. Skip Holtz used the language after the game of them being out of sync. And I think that's fair. I mean, just in terms of their body language, just in terms of kind of the demeanor, just sort of the vibe on the sideline, it just didn't really feel like sort of the normal kind of Stallions sort of culture, sort of vibe that I've grown accustomed to observing over the years of following this team. And I don't know what that was. I don't know if it was a bad week of practice. I don't know if it was they just kind of came out and got smacked in the teeth and weren't ready for it, and just tried to force it and responding to it, and it just wasn't there. I don't know if it was the pressure of the win streak and sort of that weighing on them. I don't know if it was coming off of 2 relatively close games, emotional games, and sort of being able to win those and kind of just not having that same kind of adrenaline and emotion and gas in the tank heading into this game. I don't know if it was the environment. I mean, credit to the San Antonio fans. It said there was about just under 12,000 of them there, but I think with that dome, I mean, it sounds a lot louder and crazier than you would think with the number of people there. I mean, we've had 3,000 more people at Protective roughly than we're at this game, but because Protective is open air and people aren't sort of spread out throughout the stadium, even when Protective is at its loudest, I don't feel like it has quite the same energy or atmosphere that the Alamo Dome did, because even with less people in there, because it's the dome and you got people sort of all around the field. I mean, that place really was rocking. So the Stallions haven't had a lot of, haven't had to face a lot of away crowds like that. So I don't know if that was a factor. I mean, there was a lot of things that maybe could have played into it, but for whatever it was, it just didn't seem like the Stallions were themselves. And, I think again, hindsight's 2020. I would have liked for Skip to maybe be a little bit more aggressive, and even defensively for us to maybe be a little bit more aggressive. I felt like I understand why we made some of the decisions we did in terms of times we punted or things like that. And again, like I said, hindsight's 2020. I mean, obviously looking back, we needed to be more aggressive, but it just felt like, we were kind of banking on sort of things changing or sort of us turning a corner. And we kind of, to open the second half, it seemed like maybe that was going to sort of happen. And we've historically been a very good second half team, and San Antonio historically has not as much been a very good second half team so far this season. And so, after that first touchdown, I felt like maybe the momentum was swinging, but San Antonio responded really well. And again, even after that touchdown, we just still never felt like we really hit our groove. So I don't know. I mean, I think um, the good news is that obviously you would rather lose now than in 2 or 3 weeks in the postseason when it really, really matters. Again, I'm not going to say this game doesn't matter, because every game matters. And again, I think, like I said, the Stallions really have that sort of 1-0 mindset. And so, the goal was to go 1-0 every week. And unfortunately, this week we failed to do that. The good news, again, though, is that we sort of live to die another day, and we've got opportunity and time to correct our mistakes and still achieve the goals that this team has. And like I said on X, I made a post on X. I mean, I don't think this team's goal was to go undefeated, right? Or to set some kind of win streak or something like that. Again, this team preaches the 1-0 mentality. And again, I think they really believe that and buy into it. And so the goal is just to go 1-0 every week. And for the first 8 games of the season, they achieved that goal. This week, they didn't achieve that goal. Again, the good news is that they've got another game next week. Hopefully they can go 1-0. And then they've got guaranteed another game that following week. Hopefully they can go 1-0. And then if they do, they get one more game, and hopefully they can go 1-0 in that one. And that's the goals that this team has. And once the season's done, once the championship has been played, and they look back on the season, then they can reflect on, well, look what we accomplished, look what we achieved, look how many games we won, look at our win streak, blah blah blah. But until you get to that point, that's irrelevant. And so I think that while it's frustrating that they lost, while it's sad that the win streak is over, blah, 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 blah. Like, nobody likes losing. That's all there. At the same time, this team's goals are still like it's in the front mirror, not the rear view mirror, right? Like, everything they want to achieve is still right there in front of them. And so this isn't the end of the world. And in some ways, in hindsight, this might be the best thing for this team. I mean, this team, again, was coming off a close win against Houston, which, the first time they played them, they didn't really look like they deserved to be on the same field. They're coming off a very close emotional win against St. Louis. And again, I think you could just kind of tell that the pressure has sort of been building or mounting on this team. And maybe what they needed was a loss to sort of let that pressure out, let there sort of be a release, let them sort of be an opportunity to regather, refocus, regroup, and get ready for, the postseason and the games that, again, all games matter, but the games that are really going to matter when it's all said and done. And so nobody wants to lose, but if we were going to lose, I'd rather it be now or sometime again at some point in the regular season than in the postseason. And this might be the kick in the pants that we need to sort of correct some of these mistakes and figure out how we can improve and get better as a team, and recognize that has to happen if we want to win a championship. We can't win a championship the way that we played against San Antonio. That's not going to be sufficient to get the job done. Scoring 9 points. I mean, that's the fewest points I think. I mean, I need to go back and double check this, but honestly, I didn't, because I feel pretty confident saying it. I think that's the fewest points we've ever scored in a game, and I know 3 at half. That's the lowest we've ever scored in an opening half of a game. So, offensively, that's just not going to get the job done. No matter how good our defense is, you can't expect to score 9 points and win. And so, the Stallions, I've been saying it all season long. If you go back and watch videos I've made, like the Stallions are beatable. They're a mortal team. They're not invincible, and there's a lot of parity in this league. And so, again, maybe a loss and sort of a kick in the pants is what they need to, sort of adjust their attitudes and get their minds right and be at their absolute best, be at the top of their game heading into the postseason. I think the one other big thing that needs addressed though, or we need to sort of talk about, is the defense. And one of the things that I tweeted out about this weekend was the fact that defensive coordinator John Chavis wasn't at the game, and this is the second week in a row that that's happened. And so, um, let me first kind of recap sort of what's led up to this point, and then I want to take a look at some stats with Chavis leading the defense and with him gone, and sort of how things have gone. So the first time we didn't see Chavis was 2 weeks ago when we played Houston at home. People noticed he wasn't on the sideline. They mentioned it on the broadcast, and what was said was that he was ill. And after I kind of caught wind of that, I did talk to some people that following week, and what I was told was that yes, he was ill, but he was recovering, he was getting better, he should be healthy and good and ready to go for this next game against San Antonio. So I kind of left it at that. Didn't think about it too much more. Didn't research it too much more. Or ask around too much more about it because I expected to see him back out there this past weekend. But fast forward to Saturday afternoon, I'm at the game and I notice he's nowhere to be seen on the sideline. And so I'm like, well, I don't want to publicly say that he's not here because maybe he's in the booth, calling things up there. Like he could still be here and just not be on the sideline. Maybe he doesn't quite feel well enough to be down here, walking up and down the sideline and calling plays, but maybe he's sitting up there. I was a little skeptical about that because I don't think he's ever been in the booth before, as far as I know in his career. But I didn't want to say anything definitive. So I just, said he's nowhere to be seen on the sideline. Not sure if he's here or not. I was able to get confirmation after the game that he wasn't there, which is a little alarming because he missed 2 games in a row. You start to wonder, like, is he seriously ill? Like, is he okay? What I've been told is that he was at what kind of complicates things is he was at practice this past week. So now there's this kind of strange situation where he misses a game because he's ill. Again, like I said, I was told that he was recovering. He was doing well and should be at the game in San Antonio. It's confirmed that he was at practice last week. That was confirmed to me by multiple people. So he was at practice all of last week, is my understanding. But then all of a sudden, again, he's not at the game this past Saturday against San Antonio. And so, again, there's been no official word from the team. Like I said, when they played Houston, the broadcast talked about how he was ill and how he wasn't there. But there was no official word from the team or no statement from the broadcast, as far as I know, or anything like that about his whereabouts this past weekend. And, um, you know, if he is very ill, then obviously our thoughts and prayers go out to him, and obviously want to respect his privacy. Um, but again, it's a kind of a strange situation because it's not like he's been away from the team this entire time. Again, he was at practice last week. He was expected to be there this weekend. I was only told good things, and I haven't really been told anything otherwise that would indicate that he's, all of a sudden had some sort of, terrible relapse or something that would really put his health back in jeopardy. So, all that to say, there's no sort of clear answer what's going on and where he's at and why he's not at the game. And I think, again, if he is very ill, if there's something going on, obviously want to respect his privacy. But I think at some point, it would be nice to get some sort of clarity from the team on what exactly is going on, because this is, again, 2 games in a row now that he hasn't been at, and our defense has been called by secondaries coach Corey Chamberlain, who's a very accomplished coach. He's actually from Birmingham. I've spoke about him on the show before very highly, but the defense just hasn't been the same with Chamberlain calling it. And the numbers show that. So, I'll put it up here. This is a comparison of the first time we played Houston when Chavis was calling the defense, and the second time we played Houston a couple weeks ago when Chamberlain was calling the defense. And you can see, off the bat, in terms of points, we only gave up 9 when Chavis was there versus 28 this 2 weeks ago when Chamberlain was calling the defense. The yards, the gap wasn't, overall wasn't quite so massive, 271 to 311. But look at the rush yards. We only gave up 36 yards on the ground in that first game versus 135 when Coach Chamberlain was calling defense. Now, again, Mark Thompson, I think, played a bigger role in that game. a couple weeks ago, so there is sort of that caveat. But still, 100 more yards on the ground. I mean, that's a lot. And again, that carried over into this next weekend, which we'll talk about. I mean, tackles for loss, pass breakup, sacks, all of that takeaways, all of that production was pretty similar. But again, look at the red zone and third and fourth down conversion percentages. I mean, in the red zone, the first time with Chavis calling the defense, they were only 25% successful with touchdowns in the red zone versus with Chamberlain, they were 75%. And then on third down, again, they were only 42, well, basically 43% of the time converting versus 53% 2 weeks ago. And then on fourth down, they were 1 of 3, whereas when Chamberlain was calling it, they were 50%. So again, just I don't know if it's the fact that we are maybe planning more for the pass, if it's the fact that we're maybe not being as aggressive, we're not blitzing as much. I don't know what it is. I can't sit here and say like I know and can speak definitively on what the differences are and why teams are having more success on us. But clearly, teams are scoring more points, getting more rush yards, and converting more on key plays than when Chavis was calling the defense. Again, in a comparison between the same team in 2 different weeks. Now, you might just say, well, that's only 2 weeks, or that's only 2 games, one team. How much can you really extrapolate out from that? Which is totally fair. So I compared the numbers for the Stallions for the 7 games in which Chavis has called the defense, and then for the 2 games which Chamberlain has called the defense, which again is not a huge sample size, and especially in Coach Chamberlain's defense, that's only 2 games. That's not massive. But I think it's a semi good comparison because the 2 games that Coach Chamberlain coached or called the defense, one was against a USFL team, one was against an XFL team, one was against a team that's 1-6 or 1-7 now, and or I guess 1-8 now. So not great. And then a team that, on the other hand, is 7-2, so one of the best teams in the league. So you kind of get both ends of the spectrum there. So again, it's not a perfect comparison, but I think it's enough that it's at least worth considering. And then when you look at the numbers, again, it's some of the same things stand out. So with Chavis calling the defense, we've only given up 16 points per game, basically. With Chamberlain, 23. In terms of yardage, we've given up basically 100 more yards per game almost with Chamberlain calling the defense than with Chavis. 233 per game with Chavis, 320 with Chamberlain. Now, the pass yards are relatively similar, but the rush yards, again, is where that huge gap is. We go from giving up only 53 yards on the ground with Chavis to 131 with Chamberlain. Again, tackles for loss, pass breakups, sacks, takeaways, all of that has been pretty consistent. But again, look at those red zone and third and fourth down conversion numbers. We go from 35% in the red zone giving up touchdowns to 71 with Chamberlain calling the defense. 40% basically on third and fourth down to 50% on third and fourth down with Chamberlain. So, clearly not having Chavis there, not having him call the defense has led to a lack of production out of our defense. And again, this is just one factor. There's other things that we could talk about, like injuries and again, the teams we played and all that kind of stuff. So I know you can't just isolate this maybe one thing, but Chavis has been the guy calling this defense for 3 years now. He called the defense all of 2022, all of 2023, and all of this season up until 2 weeks ago. And so it's a huge adjustment to go from that to a brand new defensive coordinator or a play caller on defense. Even if Coach Chamberlain is a very accomplished, very knowledgeable, very good coach, I mean, that's a big shift. And for whatever reason, at least in 2 games, one in which we lost for the first game all year, and another game that we kind of barely won against a team that's not nearly as good as us, and gave up a lot of points in that game, our defensive production just has not been as good. It's not been there. And so, I think one of the key things for this team is to figure out this defensive situation. Is Coach Chavis going to be back? Can we expect him back to be calling the defense moving forward? Because I think if so, that's really going to help us, hopefully. If not, if there's something that's preventing him from being there, and it's going to have to be Coach Chamberlain moving forward, how can we address some of these weaknesses that have been exposed with him as our defensive play caller? So that's something I really look forward to getting answers on and getting more clarity on of what's going on with this situation with Coach Chavis. Hopefully, by the end of the week, we'll know more, and hopefully he'll be back out there next weekend when we play Michigan. But that remains to be seen because right now we don't have clarity on what's going on. So I'll leave it at that. I think that's enough about, some of the struggles with this team and some of the things from this past week. I want to finish this episode quickly by giving out my 3-star players of the game. Unfortunately, this week was difficult for an opposite reason. It usually is difficult. Usually it's difficult because there's so many guys I feel like are worthy of recognition and worthy of stars. This week, I didn't necessarily feel like I had that exact problem. But that being said, there was some guys that still played great, and I still want to recognize. And again, this team still needs our love and support. So certainly, we don't want to stop that at all. For my one-star player, I'm actually going to go with Chavis. Overall, I mean, I know I just kind of ripped into the defense a little bit, and was kind of maybe talking a lot about their performance. In this game not being up to par, but I mean, there were stretches where I thought the defense played very well. They did only give up 18 points. 6 of that was off a trick play. And again, 6 of that was a situation where they should have at least held them to a field goal if it wasn't for that Kenny Robinson personal foul. So you take that into consideration, that's basically, about, I guess, what, 9 points that kind of can be accounted for with things maybe a little bit outside the norm. And there was some, turnovers. There were a couple sacks. There was some 3 and outs. There was some really good plays by the defense. So I think on the one hand, and I think in a lot of other scenarios and a lot of other games, you would think that our defense only giving up 18 points would be sufficient for us to get a win. The way that our offense has played, I mean, our offense has scored over 30 points for 5 straight games. So I think if I told people ahead of time, hey, we're only going to give up 18. I don't think people would say, "Oh, that's a guaranteed win," but I think they would feel pretty good about the odds of us winning the game if we only gave up 18 points. Again, based on historically how our offense has played, but unfortunately, that wasn't sufficient. That wasn't enough to cut it this week. So all that to say, I did want to recognize a couple of the defensive players. So my one-star player is Chiavatazino. He had 7 tackles on the game, 3 solo. As well as a tackle for loss and a pass deflection. And so he's a guy that continues to be huge for us, continues to be around the ball all the time, and is a defensive leader that we really need right now heading into this final stretch of the season. And then my 2-star player, I'm going to go with DeMarcus Gates. I mean, frankly, I didn't think it was Gates' best game. He had, like I said, several missed tackles on that opening drive. There were some times I felt like he didn't maybe come through for us like I expect him to, but on the whole, he also did really come through for us at other times and was a key player for us, I felt like, throughout the game. I mean, he finished the game with 9 tackles, 7 solo. He had a sack. He had a tackle for loss. He also had a forced fumble. So, without some of those huge plays by him, I think it could have been worse than it was. So I think he deserves credit for sure. And then my 3-star player of the game, without question, has to be Jay Sternberger, who unfortunately, hasn't got the same amount of targets and sort of love like he did last year from Alex Magoo. Just in this offense and with all the weapons we have, he hasn't been able to be as much of a feature player. But, Skip said it after the game, big time players show up in big ways in big time games. And that was Jace in this game. I mean, I think, he looked to me like the one guy that really came ready to play. And he had 7 catches for 110 yards and a touchdown. And most of those catches and yards he really fought for them. I mean, it wasn't just he was wide open and, was able to just, dance down the sideline into the end zone or something. I mean, he was making contested catches. He was fighting for yards after the catch, breaking tackles, tiptoeing down the sideline and staying in bounds to get more yardage. Huge touchdown catch, our only touchdown of the day. And so I felt like he really rose to the occasion, to his credit, really more than anyone else. And I think deserves a lot of recognition for that. And I hope heading into this final stretch of the season, we can continue to find ways to really make him a feature part of our offense and really find ways to get him the ball, because I feel like we're just better when we do that. And so shout out to him for a fantastic game. He's definitely my 3-star player, definitely the player of the game, I think, in everybody's opinion. And it was great to see him have that kind of performance, even if the outcome of the game was not what we all hoped. So I've said enough about that. I'm going to wrap up there. Again, we've got a big game this weekend against Michigan. Make sure you come out for that one. Show these guys some love. Show them that the city is still behind them and still supporting them as we get ready for the postseason. And then the following week after that, we'll have the first playoff game of the UFL and the USFL conference hosted in Birmingham at Protective Stadium. So you definitely want to be there for that. Don't miss that one. We'll also be against Michigan. Later this week, I'll have a preview out for that Week 10 game against Michigan. I'll talk a little bit about, are the Stallions going to sit players? Are they going to start their normal, starters? How would you approach this game when you're going to have to play the exact same team again a week later in the same place in the playoffs? So a little bit of a strange situation, but we'll break that down on the next episode. This one's already gone long enough. So thanks for tuning in. Obviously, hang in there, stick with the Stallions. just remember, there's a lot of haters out there. There's a lot of talk online. The Stallions are 29-4 in 3 seasons. They won 15 games in a row before this game. San Antonio has only won 10 games in their entire franchise history. We just ended a 15-game win streak. We've never gone undefeated before. We've lost at least 1 game every season. We've also never lost the championship. And like I said earlier, the goal wasn't an undefeated season, right? The goal is to go 1-0 each week and get to the end of the season in that championship game and go 1-0 there. And then you can look back and think about all the things that were accomplished. But that's the goal, is to go 1-0. We didn't happen this past week, but we move on. Week 10, the goal is to go 1-0, and then we'll pick it up in the playoffs and keep going week by week. So that's the goal for this team. Like I said, everything they want accomplished is still in front of them. This team will learn from this. They'll get better. They'll improve. They're still the team to beat in this league. They're still the most talented team in this league. They're still the best team in this league. They still have the best record in this league. Yes, it was frustrating. Yes, the team did not look like themselves. Yes, there was a lot of mistakes. Yes, there was a lot of weaknesses, a lot of vulnerabilities, a lot of things that were exposed. But the good news is those things can get corrected. And by the time we potentially, maybe, hopefully see San Antonio again or play St. Louis, Lord willing, in the playoffs, in the championship, then, we can hopefully have those things corrected and, like I said, achieve the ultimate goal. But on the way there, we got to take care of Michigan. And again, like I said, continue to just focus on going 1-0 every week. So hang in there, continue to support the Stallions, continue to show them love, continue to let these guys know that we're behind them 100% and that they're going to take care of business. So this is Luke Miller again. Thank you for tuning in to State of the Stallions. Giddy up.